Medo-Persian. No one could deliver the ram which represented the Medo-Persian Empire. No one could deliver that ram, that Medo-Persian Empire, from the goat, which represent Greece. The notable leader of the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great, died early. It says that suddenly, the scripture tells us that suddenly the goat horn was broken. The large horn was broken. The large horn represented Alexander the Great in the Greek Empire. But when that horn was suddenly broken, said that this fierceness, this toughness, now is broken. Because the notable leader of the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great, died at an early age, at age 32. And after Alexander died, the empire was divided among 4 rulers. So in place of the notable one fierce ruler, Alexander the Great, there was a replacement with 4 rulers. And these rulers, 4 rulers, ruled their own dominions. They didn't rule the entire Greek Empire together. They came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. There were 4 generals that divided the empire after Alexander's death into 4 parts. Now in verses 9 through 12, we kind of move to a close of this first segment of chapter 8. In verses 9 through 12, the strong horn arose from the male goat's 4 horns. So we're going to read that. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, the army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifice, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all of this and prospered. Now, this strong horn, as we said, grew exceedingly great toward the south, the east, and the word says the glorious land. Now, the fulfillment in one of the 4 successors to Alexander the Great, south, east, and the glorious land, was one of the 4 rulers named Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who ruled over Syria and Israel's land under the Seleucid dynasty. And this Antiochus IV Epiphanes gained the throne by murdering his brother, the former King Seleucus Philopator, maybe the wrong pronunciation. The son of Philopator was the rightful heir to the throne, but this Antiochus IV Epiphanes had him held hostage in Rome. Interesting. Now, Antiochus IV legitimized his rule mainly through flattery and bribery. This was one of the successors to Alexander the Great. And that title, Epiphanes, means illustrious, and it also alludes to deity. So he's just kind of saw himself as God. But the Jews changed that name Epiphanes to Epiphanes, Epimanes, E-P-I-M-A-N-E-S, which means madman. But the Jews called him madman. And then we see this term, a glorious land, in the scripture. And we've learned that this is the Hebrew term for the land of Israel. And we can read about it in Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 6. It speaks about the glory of all lands. And also in Ezekiel chapter 25, verse 9, the glory of the country. And we find some similar word in Daniel chapter 11, verse 16 and verse 41. And in Psalms 48 and 2. And then the scripture we just read talks about casting down hosts and some of the stars to the ground. And we learned that these can be symbols for, in the Old Testament, for angels and kings and leaders or people of God at large. So it has, these symbols has different connotation. This scripture was fulfilled in Antiochus Epiphanes and his attacks against rulers and God's people in general. That's what he did. And then we find this term, the stars of heaven, in Genesis 12:3 and 15:5, the hosts of the Lord, in Exodus 12:41. And so this alludes to and points to God's people in general. Now this Antiochus oppression of the Jews came to a head in December 168 BC. He ordered his generals to seize Jerusalem on a Sabbath. He messed up real bad. And he erected an idol of Zeus and desecrated the altar with an offering of swine and sprinkling pig juice in the sanctuary. And so sacrifice was stopped due to desecration of the temple. We're reading the scripture about the abomination of desecration. So the temple was desecrated, and so the Jews could not worship in the temple. And then there's much discussion about the duration of the desecration. And the scripture talks about 2,300 days. And so there's debate, and I'm not going to try to get into all that. But according to some of the researchers, states that the temple was cleansed December 25th, 165 BC. And said that if you count back 2,300 days from then, you come to the year that Antiochus Epiphanes began his persecution, which would be 171 BC. So we've covered quite a bit of ground here today, sort of laid the foundation. Daniel is concerned, Daniel's perplexed by this vision that he sees. And as you read through this chapter, you'll find out that he's concerned about what does it all mean. And so in the succeeding verses of this chapter, we will learn how God dispatched Gabriel. God always sent Gabriel on assignments to bring clarity to man. So the Lord dispatched Gabriel to explain or interpret what Daniel was seeing. And Daniel, as you know, he had that gift of prophecy. He could see into the future. He knew what was going on. But this kind of shook him up. And Gabriel came to explain to him what was going on. And that it was not, and the word that Gabriel gave Daniel is the same word that God is giving his people today. That although we are reading and we see calamities and we see things going on, and it has caused some of the internet prophets to say, okay, the world is going to end right now. It's going to end on this date. It's going to end on that date. And they have all been proven false. That God knows when the world is ending. He knows when he will rapture his church. He knows when he will take his people out of here. So it is not a time for us to become anxious and to lean toward, oh, this prophet is saying this prophet is saying this, oh yeah, this makes sense here. Yeah. You can take a lot of things that are going on today and you can make them apply to some scripture. You can say, oh yeah, this applies to this. This is what's happening to this. It doesn't mean that in every instance that's going to be accurate. Because we don't know when this world is going to come to a close. We know what we know for certainty that God said is going to end. He's coming back. We know that.